And hello everybody. Today my topic is about the international comparative studies of the spatial planning laws and the planning and the policies. And first we choose 6 countries. It contains the Japan and the Korea and the Netherlands and the United Kingdom and the United States and Singapore. And first, the international comparison point of the wheel. The first is the space of the human life in the natural space. And the different countries have different ideas. And the first is whether to strictly distinguish between the human living space and the production space as a point of the disagreement. And the other one is whether the urban and the rural and areas as integration planning is the other point of the disagreement. And for the human activities of the space, and the Japan and the Korea and clearly state that the spatial planning is not to the economic activities, but to the national life. So clearly, the distinguish between the production space and the urban living space as a civil law system of the country. And the UK and the United States is more focused on the integration of the human activities in the urban rural planning in the United Kingdom. In the Netherlands, environment vision is the United States of the Americans' integrated growth is to large cities and the villages as a whole, and human activities as an integrated spaces planning. And the other international comparison point is the legal system. And the first is the civil law system. Such as the Japan and the Korea and the Netherlands. In these countries, they pay more attention to the land use planning and the right to approve the development and the constructions. And the other side is the common law, and such as the UK and the USA. And they pay more attention to the planning content and paid attention to the planner's discretion. So from this table, and we decided the legal system to the civil law and the common law. And the common law is the development and implement basics of the planning and the policies. And the planning is the reflect of the act and the law. And for the management policies reflects the government's intentions. And so in countries where city documents are based, planning is instructive. And the planning is the embodiment of the regulations and the basics of use management, reflecting the intention of the national policy. And the law, policies, and the planning is consist of the component to be the basics of the permit system for the permission, and the government to manage the land use by developing land use planning and conducting the permits management. And the land ownership system in different countries. The legal system in different countries. For the Japan and the Netherlands is the civil law, and the UK is the common law. And for the absolute ownership, for Japan and the Netherlands is no planning and no development. And for the United Kingdom is the planner description. And the permanent status of the Japan and the Netherlands. And we can see the permanent stages in Japan and the Netherlands is the application for permits is at the development stage, and the UK is at the planning stage. In the permit of the different countries, for Japan is the development permits, and the Netherlands is the environmental permit, and for the UK is the planning permits. And the permits intervening in the land right is for the Japan and the Netherlands, the right to the construction is freely on land. And for this conclusion, in the Japan and the Netherlands, both of these two countries is the civil law, and the landowner has all rights to relate to the land and not against the law. And the special for the UK, the landowner has all land ownership, but not except the development rights. And first, the Japan's land use planning is a long-term plan formed by the comparison consideration of the nature and society and economy and the culture and the other aspects under the principle of the protecting the nature environment and ensure the priority of the national public service. For Japan, the central government, and there are 47 prefectural governments, and there are 47 prefectural governments in the 990 cities. Okay, and the next is the rankings of the cities. The first is the population is more than 700,000, and the second is the middle level cities. The population is more than 300,000, And the next is the population is more than 200,000. And in our city, the Kanazawa city is the middle level cities. The population is more than 300,000. And okay, the next, the history of the spatial planning, the policy in Japan. And the first stage one is the national land comprehensive planning and the development. And the stage two is the metropolitan development. And stage three is the local planning and the wide area and planning development. Okay, for the history of the planning design in Japan. In the first stage, we just mentioned about the comprehensive national plan development is the first comprehensive national development plan from the 1962. And the second time is also the first stage. And the second stage is the third one and the fourth one. And to the third stage of the local planning and wide area planning development is the fifth comprehensive national development plan, and the national plan formation plan and the vision of the future society. And this is the history of the spatial planning policies in Japan from the 1897 to the 2018. And the land use planning in Japan, there are three levels. And the first is the national plan, and the second is the prefecture plan, and the third is the local plan. And according to the different laws, according to different laws divided different function zonings, such as according to the City Planning Act to decided the urban area, and according to the Forest Basic Act to decided the forest area. And this is the master plan of the Kanazawa city. And this is the land use planning in the Katayama-su in Ishikawa-ken. And you can see different function zoning on this graph, such as the agriculture and the forest and the urban planning and so on. And from this picture, we can see there is the 都市計画地域と、agriculture 農業地域と森林地域なんか forest area and the 自然公園の地域 nature park and the 自然保健地域nature protection area. And this is the natural park area. This is a rural area. This is urban area. This is the urban area. And the next country is the Korea. And Korea is the civil law country. So based of the law, the land planning is a plan for the utilization, development, and protection of the land. And in order to cope with the future economic and social changes, and also to determine the direction of the land development. And the history of the planning from the first time is the 1922 92 to the 81 is the first time comprehensive land development planning. And the second time is the 82 to 91. And the third time of the comprehensive land development planning is the 92 to the 2001. And from the 2000 and now 2020 is the fourth time comprehensive land development planning. And from this year 2021 and 2 years later is the fifth time comprehensive land planning. The next is the system of the law and the policies. Just now we mentioned about, and the Korea is a civil law country. So based of the laws make the planning. The law from the National Land Basic Law and the Land Use Planning Act and the Land Planning Act and the other related laws. And also they have some policies. And yes, they have also some policies. And we can see from this picture, that different laws are enacted in the different geographic areas, just as Japan, in different geography types, and plan according to the law and manage it in accordance with the law. Okay, the next country is the Netherlands. And we can see from this table, and the Netherlands is roughly the size of the Kyushu in Japan. 面積は日本の九州は同じくらいで、and most of the country consists of either the lowland along the sea or recleared the land, with 1/4 of the country at or below the sea level, and the population decide in the 200 kilometers is higher than that of Japan. 人口の密度は、400人毎平方メートルで、日本よりちょっと高いですね。The situation of the spatial planning, and there are 5 catalogs of the land use. It is the agriculture area, and the forest, and the nature, and the water, and the built-up areas. And this land use classification is classified as the 3 color space, as the red space, and the green space, and the blue space. And the red space, you can see from the picture, and And the right space is the built-up area. You can see from this picture, and including the residential area and the construction site and the other built-up area. And the green space is the natural environment area except the water, and including the park and agriculture and the forest and the nature area. And the blue space is the water. And the next is the history of the spatial planning policies in Netherlands. From the 1901, the Housing Act to the Spatial Planning Act and the National Environment Plan, and to now 2016, the Environment and the Planning Act. Also, the Netherlands is you can see from this also, and the Netherlands is the civil law country. And this is the history of the planning design in the Netherlands. From the 2001 housing law process of a framework of the development of the public housing and urban planning to regulate private construction project development activities. And the Netherlands Spatial Planning originated from the housing law in 2001, and the other to regulate the private construction project development activities. A framework for the development of public housing and urban planning was proposed. And on this basis, the government for the national plan was established in 1941 to be responsible for national land planning, which was responsible for drafting part of the national land planning and in incorporating the spatial planning law proposed in the 1950. And to the recently is the national policy strength on the infrastructure and the spatial planning in 2012. And aimed to the sustainable development. And in the development focus is on the infrastructure and protecting the nature environment. And based on the just now I mentioned about Netherlands is a civil law, a civil law country, and it based on this several laws and such as the Environment Protection Act and the Environment and Planning Act and the Rural and Development Law and the Nature Protection Act and the Water Law. And the spatial planning management system in Netherlands. The first one is the central government, and the first one is the central government, and through the specific sections to maintain or enhance the spatial quality of the central region's new space and development. As we mentioned about, and the Netherlands and have three levels. The first is the government, and the second is the provinces, and the third is the local. And before the 2008, and the national government make the planning decision, and the province make the regional plan, and the local made the structure plan. And after the 2008, the planning has been integrated to the structural vision, and the planning has been integrated. And the conclusion of the spatial planning system and the national and the province levels make the environmental vision, and the local level and the environmental planning make the environmental planning, and the replace and the original structural vision and the land use planning separately, but the environmental vision has no legal effect. And this is the history of the planning in Singapore. And the first time of the concept planning is the 1991, and this is the planning. This is the figure is the first concept planning, and guided the urban development and infrastructure construction during the 20 years from the 1991 to the 1991, thereby determining the ring-shaped urban structure, and ring shaped express the road network. The road network that the structure was formed around the central water area in the nature protection land. In the central business district, new towns, in the industrial area, and airports, and so on. And the concept connected the different cities in series using the rail transit network. And this is the second concept planning. It is from the 1991, and this is the second concept planning in 1991. And this is the third concept planning from the 2001. And in further examined the situation of the sustainable land use of the point out that it is necessary to provide the land supply for the long-term housing and create conditions for Singapore's development as an Asian international financial center through the renewal of the land in the city center. And this is the 2000. This is the third concept plan in 2001, and this is the fourth concept planning in 2011, based on the Singapore's long-term population and economic development goals in 2030. It proposes to create more in the livable urban environment, and including providing the affordable housing and supporting the facilities, and create a great landscape living environment, and providing the convenient transportation facilities, and improving the transportation in various areas of the city concept, and also ensure that the supply of the land for the future for the future urban development. And this is the land use planning system and in Singapore, and all of the land use functions in Singapore is publicly available on this website. And in different countries, there are different legal systems. And in the civil law system countries, planning is based on the law and needs to be matched with the government policy. And in countries of the common law system, and the planning is based on the policy, and the boundaries of the regulations are not clearly at act. And in Japan, this figure is conclusion of the Japan. And in Japan, this we mentioned about is the civil law country, and the countries was the planning was based on the law system and the policy system, and it also make the boundary very clearly in the act. And in Iceland is also a civil law country, and Iceland make the planning by the law system and the policy system, and both of the law system and the policy system is based to make the planning. And the planning is the environment planning. And in the Netherlands, we just mentioned, but the Netherlands is a civil law country, and they make the environment plan based on the law and the policy. And the Netherlands, which is also a civil law country, it develops a comprehensive plan based on the law and the policies, and integrated into the environmental planning. And the UK is the next to the UK, United States, is a country of the common law country, in the planning according to the policy, and focus on the role of the planners. And this research by introduction about introducing the policies and regulations and the planning of different countries, we know that And in civil law countries, the land use planning is for land space is strictly formulated, and the right to the pro-development in the construction is also to ensure that the spatial planning in management. In the other side, the common law system is not like the civil law countries. It will pay more attention to the content of the planning, and the management pay more attention to the discretion of the planners, and such as the United States and the UK, and the leadership of the government and urban and rural planning closely integrated and focused on the urban and rural and the integration and the development. And thank you very much.
今日はこれで終わります。ご清聴ありがとうございました。